Okay, Sam, I'm recording now. So yesterday's class I recorded, but obviously the sound was bad on it because the recording or the mic was not as bad. Okay. All right, so this time, instead of connecting from the dev server, from the user server, Ulrich, to the firewall, Fuego, that's what we did yesterday for one of the security users. We want to do the same thing, but we want to go from Ulrich to Walter for a dev user, right? Okay, so the first thing we need to do is, okay, I've got two SSH connections. Let's see.
Walter is your web server, right?
My Walter is my web server, yes. Okay, I'm going to need this one up and running, so I'm going to start that. Okay, Ulrich, here we go. I'm going to exit from my firewall because I don't need to connect to the firewall now. I'm going to exit from Sue, my security user.
Can I ask you a quick question?
You bet.
How come the host name, whenever I set it, the host name command, it doesn't save when I restart?
Which system?
The Ubuntu servers.
Okay. Yeah, the Ubuntu servers, you've got to execute commands and change it in another location. And I believe it's on the Ubuntu systems. I think it's hostname CTL. I'd have to look that one up. But I'm pretty sure it's hostname CTL, and then you specify the new hostname. Remember, the hostname CTL, there's actually a temporary hostname that you can set and a permanent hostname. I'll let you look that up. We talked about that in last class. Sam? Sue. A boy named Sue. Okay, so for my, let me pull up my diagram again. Make sure that I'm using the right users. Open recent. Okay, so for my development users, I have designated three: Dave, Daryl, and Don. So I'm going to play around with Dave today. Okay, you can choose whatever name you're using for your system. Okay, but I want Dave. The assignment says that Dave, Daryl, and Don should have access to the web server. Okay, through SSH. So let's go ahead and see if we can make that happen. So let me get rid of this. Let's zoom in on our session here. Yes. It should already be up there. I posted it right after class during lunch. So it should have been up there since yesterday. If it's not, if you can't access it, let me know. I need to fix it. Okay, I just realized we had a couple of people come in, so let me get you. Did anybody else come in? No, I think that's it. Okay, so the first thing I need to do is, I'm logged in as root here. The first thing I need to do is create my user. Okay, so I want to, what command did we use on here? Add user?
Yeah, it should be
Add user, and I want to create a user called Dave. Okay. Group add, and I need to add development. Okay. Add group development, and then I want to add Dave to the development group. So user mod, right? Dash A, capital G. Development. Can't type this morning. Okay, and then the user, Dave, right? Okay, so if I look at my home directory listing, I now have a user called Dave, in here. Okay, let's check our password file and our group file. Let's do a grep for Dave in /etc/password and /etc/group. Let's see if that'll work. Okay, in the password file, I've got an entry for Dave. That looks good. His home directory, he's got bash. In the group, I've got Dave has his own group, and then I've got the development group, and Dave's a member of that. Were we supposed to add Dave to the sudo users group? No. Okay, so he's not supposed to be in the wheel group. So this looks like it's correct for Dave. Questions? Yeah, Z?
Okay. How come mine asked for a whole bunch of extra information when I did add user?
Are you on your Rocky system?
Oh,
Oh,
I'm on the wrong thing.
this is on Rocky.
My bad.
Okay, we're getting to that. Okay, we're going to do that one next. Okay, so Dave needs to be able to, we don't want Dave to be able to access the web server as root. Okay, we want Dave to be able to access the web server as Dave. Okay, Dave needs his own account on the web server. So let's go over to the web server and get Dave added to that. Yep, you're jumping ahead. Okay, so we need to add them to both systems. So now I'm going to jump over to my Walter system. Okay, that's my web server. Let's click in there. Okay, right now the only user I have on here is me. So I want to do the same thing over here. So I want to do add user. Is that what we're going to do?
I don't know. I did that originally, and then it didn't prompt me for a password or anything, so I just did user add instead, and it worked better.
Okay, so there's two different commands on Ubuntu. If we do a man page for user add, okay, it tells us that this is a command to create a new user or update default user information. Okay, right here under the longer description, it says user add is a low-level utility for adding users. On Debian, administrators should usually use add user instead. So add user is a little more user-friendly. So let's use that add user. Okay, so let's do a man on add user. Okay, there's some options that we can specify, home directory, the shell that we want, all of that sort of stuff. Okay, probably the only one that we're going to need is we're going to need to add a group. Okay, and we want to add this user to that group. So we need to make sure that we take care of that piece as well. No, that's fine. Go for it. Okay. Okay, so I want to do add user Dave. Okay, this is on my web server. Add user Dave. Okay, so it adds user, creates his group, gives him the appropriate IDs, and it's asking for a password for Dave. Okay, I'm just going to hit enter on both of these. Okay, so password unchanged. We don't want to change the password for Dave. Dave should not be able to log in using a password. Okay, that's one of the things I stipulated. So we want to bypass that. Okay, so we don't want to try again. I just hit enter a bunch of times to get past that. What's that?
Does it have to be called Dave?
No.
That's not my question. So our new numerical values allowed?
Oh, could you do Dave 5?
Well, either Dave 5 or like Dev 1.
I believe that would be allowed. I've never created a user with a dash in it. Oh, okay. So apparently it doesn't like it. I think you can do it, but it's probably not recommended. Okay. Zeke, as far as your question, no, it does not have to be called Dave. Okay. You need to have 3 development users and 2 security users. I chose to use names for developers that start with the letter D so that I can keep them straight. Okay. My security users start with the letter S so that I can keep those straight. So I don't have a name that starts with an M and I go, oh, was Mary a developer or a security person? So I chose those names for my convenience. You can choose whatever name you want. Okay. Okay, so we need to enter the full name. So Dave's name is Dave, the developer. We'll make that his full name. We don't need to specify a room number or a work phone or a home phone or other. We can say, yes, this information is correct, and we get our prompt back. Okay, so let's do grep for Dave in /etc/password and /etc/group. We'll look for both of those at the same time. Okay, so we have an entry for Dave in our password file, and we have an entry for Dave in the group. Okay, so we need to create a group. So the command we used to add Dave was add user. Okay, so we can use the add group command. Okay. Okay, I'm going to create the group development. Add group development. Okay, so it adds that group. Now we need to add Dave to the group. Okay, how do we do that? User mod -A capital G. Development and Dave. Okay, so let's re-execute. That grep command to check our configuration. Okay, sure enough, in the Etsy password file, we still have the entry for Dave. We now have a new group, development, and Dave is a member of that group. Okay, so we've got both of these users. Okay, we've got both of these systems set up identically now. So Dave has an account on Ulrich, the user system, and Dave has an account on Walter, the web server. Okay, everybody got that? Okay, way ahead of you. Just kidding, just kidding. Okay. All right, so we have those 2 user accounts. Now we want to be able to allow Dave to get to this system, not from a login prompt. We don't want him to be able to log in directly, okay, because we haven't given him a password he shouldn't be able to log in. We could actually change the entry in the password file instead of bin bash. Does anybody remember what we could put here instead of bin bash to prevent him from logging in? What's that? Guest? Okay, that might work because I don't know what guest is and the system might not either. Okay, if we look at the Etsy password file, there's actually a pretty standard entry. If we grep for login in the Etsy password file, okay, there's actually an executable called user sbin no login, okay, that prevents a user from logging in. Okay, so we could set that if we wanted to. Let's not do it for this example right here. Okay, so we need to go back to our user system, to the Rocky system. And what we want to do is we want to, as Dave, okay, we need to go in as Dave and we need to go through the process of generating our keys, public and private key. Okay, how do we do that? Okay, there's a key gen. First of all, we need to get to Dave. SU-Dave. Okay, that's going to switch us to the Dave user. As root, we shouldn't need a password. We should just be able to become Dave. So if we do an ID command to just check, sure enough, it says that we're Dave. Okay, we're in the group. We've got the development group, so we're all set and ready to go. Okay, let's make sure we're in the right directory. Do a PWD. Sure enough, we're in home Dave. Okay, let's do an ls-al. Okay, we've got a couple of entries in our home directory. Okay, notice we don't have a .ssh yet. Okay, so let's generate our key file. So what's the command? SSH-keygen. Okay, because we're Dave, this is going to generate the public private key pair for Dave. Okay, so it's going to say, where do you want to save it? This is the correct location. The default location is fine. We can accept that. So let's go ahead and hit enter. Okay. Do we want to put a passphrase on it? Okay, we should always put a passphrase on our SSH keys. This one, we're going to make very complex and set it to Dave so that we can remember it. Okay. If it's our own user, our own account, we probably have one, maybe two SSH keys. Okay. Since we're doing this for all kinds of different users, we're going to pick a cheap one. Okay. So again, we get the ASCII art representation of our key. If you remember the one from yesterday, this looks very, very different from Sue's. Okay. Having different graphical representations helps us kind of visually identify which key we're using. Okay, so here we are as Dave. Let's change directories to the .ssh directory. Let's look at the files that we've got in here. We've got an ID RSA. Remember, this is our private key. Okay, and this is the public key. Okay, let's take a look at that public key. Cat ID _ RSA.pub. Okay, the public key, when the public key is written, it's written in a format, okay, with the identifier for the type of key that it is. This could be SSH DSA. Okay, that's another type of SSH key encryption that can be used. Here we're using the RSA. Okay, and then we've got the key, which goes all the way down to here. And then we've got a comment at the end, which indicates that this is Dave at a particular system. Okay, so what we need to do is we need to take this key and we need to put it over on on Walter, the web server, in Dave's home directory, in the .ssh directory, in the authorized keys files, right? Okay, so how are we going to get that over there? Can we copy and paste it? Okay, so let's open a new window. Yeah, let's. Yeah, let's not do the type. Okay, so let's SSH over to our web server. Okay, the only account we have on the web server so far . Okay, so what do we have available to us on the web server? Okay, we've got our administrative account. We could get in as, I could get in as Kirk, right? Okay, I should probably be able to do that. Okay, I might be able to get in as root. It's probably better that we access it as Kirk and then SU to root. Okay. All right, so I'm going to do that. I'm going to SSH into it as Kirk. Okay, well, I'm logged in as Kirk on this system, so I don't technically need to specify that. 172 dot, I can't remember the IP address over here. So let's check the IP address. That should be 172.22.4.52, 22.4.52. I just catted out the Etsy password file. Okay, so what's happening here? Just say yes.
This is we can use that key to verify, right? You were talking about that yesterday, right?
Yeah, so what is this notification that we've got here? Okay, this notification is okay, this notification that we just saw pop up there is this public key from our server, okay, being transferred over to the known host file on our local system. Okay, we're on Rocky as Kirk. Okay, I'm logged in on Rocky as Kirk, and I've SSH'd over to my web server. Okay, the web server says, this is who I am, this is my public key, and by accepting it, okay, I am saying I want that entry to go into my Kirk, into my known host file. Okay? So like Jeremy said, we just say yes at that one. No, we haven't copy and pasted the public key. We're still trying to log into the server. Okay, so I'm going to say yes at this point. Okay, so that my thing gets that known host file, or that public key gets added to my known host file. Okay, and now I need to log in. Okay, I'm able to log in here with a password. Okay, but we want that disabled eventually. So I'm going to put my password in for that account. And it kicked me out.
You might have waited too long.
Okay, let's try it again. Oh, you know what? I'm wondering if I have, oh, there we go. Yeah, apparently I just waited too long. Okay. So I got logged in here. What do I need to do now on my server? Okay, I'm trying to get to a place where I can copy this public key over to Dave's account on here. Okay, so do I know Dave's password? Do I on this system? When I created Dave's account on the web server on Walter, did I give it a password? No, I didn't. So I don't know the password. When we created Dave on the web server, we did not give it a password. So we don't know the password. So we can't use the su dash command, because if I try as a normal user, I'm logged in as Kirk. If I try and do an su dash space Dave, the system is going to say, okay, you want to be Dave. What's Dave's password? And I don't know. Okay, so the way I'm going to do it is I'm going to do a sudo -s and get to root. I can get to root. Okay, so I'm going to become the root user, and I'm going to go do all of this setup for Dave as the root user. Yes. Yes, if you set a password, yes. Okay, but there's some stuff that you won't be able to do as that user. One of the things I asked you to do is turn off password authentication. So Dave should not be able to log in using a password on Walter. Well, eventually we want to set it up, but you need to create all the other users before we do that. Oh, okay. Okay, so we want to change directories /home/Dave. Okay, we should have a Dave account. we want to do an ls-la. Okay, these are the files, directories that are associated with Dave's account. Okay, so where do I need to put this public key file? On the server. This is the server. You need to create a directory. Authorized underscore keys is the name of the file, but it needs to be in the what directory? .ssh directory. So I don't have that directory. So let's do a mkdir.ssh. Okay, and then we want to do I'm going to put a semicolon there so I can specify multiple commands, and then I'm going to change directories to .ssh. Okay, so that created the directory and then changed into it. Connor? For user Dave, or your username? So, okay, did you change CD/home?
I went CD home dev1.
So do a CD to just home, /home. Okay, do an ls. So do a tail on /etsy/password. Interesting. So it created the account and it says it created the directory, but it didn't create the 3 directories. You can manually create them. What command did you use to create them? Do history. Did you do them today?
Yeah,
Type history.
I think it was user add. I did it before. I did it before we started class today.
Okay. So if you used user add instead of add user, that's one of the downsides to user add is that you have to specify more stuff. So user add doesn't create the directory by default.
Okay. Just do make dir/home/.
You can, but you need to make sure you change the ownership and permissions associated with the file. You need to change all of that. There's also some skeleton files. Like if you look in here, I've got the .bash_logout.bashrc profile.
I'll just delete the accounts.
Okay. Yes. Yeah. So there's a command user delete that will delete the users.
User delete and then add user.
Yeah. And then if you use the add user, yeah.
So are none of the development accounts supposed to have passwords?
So the developer accounts on your user system. So all of the users, for me, that's Ulrich. For all the users, they should be able to log in directly using a password on the user system. So, but the other systems, okay, the other servers, the web server, the file server, the firewall, okay, people need to log in using an SSH session.
So that means that on the servers, they shouldn't have passwords.
Right. Okay, so here I am in Dave's home Dave's.ssh directory. Okay, now I need to edit the authorized keys files, right? So I'm going to edit authorized _keys. Okay, and then I just need to cut and paste Dave's key from one system to the other. Okay, so I'm going to do a Control-Shift-C. Notice I just selected Dave at, I didn't select the whole thing so that I can edit it over here. I'm going to insert it over here, Control-Shift-V, and then I'm going to say Dave at Ulrich. Okay, so I copied Dave's public key off of Ulrich, pasted it into his authorized key files on Walter, the web server. Yes. Yeah, so that last field there, Dave at wherever, that's just a free form comment field. You could type something like, this is an account for Dave and he's a real jerk. Okay, and all that would be the comment associated with that file. Okay, so you can put whatever you want in there.
And that, so an equal sign, is the equal sign that comes back to the comment, or is it just comments?
It's the space right here. The equal sign is actually part of the key here. Okay, once we get the key pasted into the authorized keys file, okay, we're good to go ahead and get out. So if we do an ls-l, okay, we should see the authorized keys file. If we do a cat on the authorized keys file, we should see the contents of that file with Dave's key in it. Okay, so very critical. What's the last step we need to do on this? Change the mode of the file. Okay, let's do an ls-l. Oh, we've got it right up above. So when I did the ls-l, okay, we've got the authorized keys file. There's actually two problems that we have here. Okay, when we had the authorized keys file on the firewall, remember we were logging into the firewall as root. Okay, and so the authorized keys file was for the root user, and so the user owner of the file needed to be root. Okay, in this case, this authorized keys file should be associated with the user Dave. So because the root user created this file, the root owns it. So we need to make sure that we not only change the mode of the file, the permissions associated with it, but we need to change the owner of the file as well. Okay, so we need to change the owner. So we do need to do a change own here. We need to change the ownership of Dave or to Dave of the authorized keys file. So we need to change own Dave authorized keys. And then we need to do a change mode 600. Yep, just a minute. Is that better? Okay, so I executed two commands here, change own Dave authorized keys, change mode 600 authorized keys. That changed the ownership of the file here to Dave, gave him the file that should be associated with his account, changed the permissions so nobody else can look at that file. So that then is set up properly for Dave. Okay, what was the other thing we needed to do? We need to do the same thing for the directory. So if we do an ls-ld, okay, that's going to give us the permissions that are associated and ownership that's associated with the directory that we're in, the current directory, which is .ssh. Again, the owner is root because that's the individual who created this account, and the permissions need to be altered so that nobody else can read it besides Dave. So we need to do the change own command again and give Dave permission or ownership of the current directory. Yeah. So root will still be able to access the file. Okay, we'll still be able to own the file. The problem is that that if this file is owned by somebody other than the user who is trying to access the file to log in, okay, that's the problem. When Dave tries to use this file and supply his key to log in, SSH is very strict in terms of its checking. If this file is not owned by Dave, SSH will not allow this key to be used by Dave. Does that make sense? Okay, it's a security thing. It's like if I could somehow put my SSH keys file, authorized keys file in your home directory, I could log in as you. Okay, but we need to make sure that doesn't happen, and therefore we only look for files that are owned by Dave. Okay, so here we want to change the ownership to Dave of the current directory .ssh, and then we need to change the permissions associated with that file as well. Change mode 700 in this case for a directory. So that gives us execute permission. The execute permission allows you to change directories in there. And now if I do an ls-ld, I can see that my current directory .ssh is in fact owned by Dave and has the appropriate permission so that Dave is the only one who can get into there. Of course, root as the root user can still get in there, but nobody else can. Okay, so that should set up everything that we need on the server for Dave. Okay, so let's go back over to our user system as Dave. I think that was this window over here. Okay, sure enough, I'm logged in as Dave. Let me change back to my home directory. Okay, there I am as Dave. So I should be able to SSH from here to the web server and log in as this user, okay, using that public private key pair. So let's try it. Okay, we want to do SSH. Okay, because we're going as the same user, we should just be able to specify the IP address. Okay, I think that's right. Okay, this is my Rocky system. Okay, and I'm logged in as Dave. Okay, and I'm trying to SSH. Okay, this I think is the IP address of my web server, Walter. Okay. Okay, so I'm SSHing as Dave into the web server. Yes. As a capital S for in their name? Yes. So you need to specify the username. Okay. Specify the username with the lowercase s at the beginning with an @ sign. Okay. Yep. Okay. So I'm going to hit enter on this. Okay. Again, what's happening here? Why am I getting this? It's the first time I'm connecting, but what is getting transferred here? The public key from the server, the public key from the web server, okay, is transferring it down here. When I SSH'd in over here, didn't I already get that key? It was the same key. What was different about it? The user. Okay, the user, when I SSH'd in over here, I SSH'd in from the Kirk account, okay, to the server. Here I'm SSHing in as Dave. Okay, so remember when this comes down, this is getting stored in the individual's known host file. Okay, everybody has their own known host file. Here, when we got that message, it was updated in the known host for the user Kirk. Here, it's getting updated in the known host for Dave. So if I go ahead and hit yes, it asks me for my passphrase. Okay, my passphrase for the user Dave public key or private key was the very complex Dave. When I put the password in, sure enough, I'm able to log in. Rashad's got a blank stare.
Oh, I'm in.
Oh, you're in? Oh, you already got it. Okay. Okay.
The commands I copied down, but once I get into the web server, I don't know what to do.
Okay. You're logged into the web server as who?
The dev user, dev one.
Oh, okay. So you logged in. Okay. So you need to create a .ssh file. or sorry, a .sh directory. So sorry, change directory. Yep. Okay. And then you need to change directories in there. Okay. Now you need to edit the authorized keys file. Okay. And now you need to go get your public key. Okay, this is a non-graphical interface, so I don't know that you're going to be able to do cut and paste. Try it up here, edit. No, it doesn't give you the option. So try an SSH in from here. Okay, try and do that same process from there. Uh-huh. Okay, so we just did that for one user, right? Okay, you need to go through that same process for 2 more times for each of the other users. Okay? All right, so I'll let you guys work on that. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to help.